Hello. It's been a little bit. I dropped off the face of the earth last term because I took too much onto my plate. But it is now the 13th of January 2025. A whole year has come and gone, and I am actually in probably about half an hour after I filmed this, heading back to campus for my first day since coming back from holiday. I spent Christmas away, which was very, very lovely and very restorative and very much what I needed at the end of last term. But I wanted to try restarting by just talking through where I am and a bit of what happened. I did take some footage over the last term, and my aim was always like, I'm going to put this together into a video, I'm going to recap everything, but I think I've hit that sunk cost fallacy stage of, if you don't just resume from where you are, you're never going to start making these videos again. And it is very useful to me to make these and to talk about my my process and my experience. So I wanted to do that again, and I wanted to feel like Callie the scholar, because I've not been her tons except when I went on rants, scholastic rants over the holiday. But yeah, so basically what happened is that I was on campus 2 days in a row last term, just due to scheduling that I had no control over. I joined the college chorus, I joined the choir. I've not been in a choir for like 17 years, 16, 17, and it has just been so wonderful. Music has always been something that's really important to me, but obviously there's not a ton of opportunities for it in my life now, and it's something I've wanted to do for a while, and I finally took the risk and the leap and did it. It was very, very hard to begin with, because of going to a new place with people I didn't know, worrying about the accessibility of things and all of that kind of thing. But by the end of the term, I performed in a concert in front of loads of people, including the composer of the piece we were performing. So I'm really proud of that, and it was a really important thing to me to do. I think sometimes my brain weasels get at me and go, oh, why did you spend your limited bandwidth and spoons on something like that when you should have been spending it on your work? But it's been really transformative for me and really reminded me that I am, that's not a piece of myself I've completely lost. I still have access to her. So yeah, it was really, really lovely. So I had that, and then the next day was the class that I was shadowing last term. So I ended up teaching 2 sessions. After the first session, I was completely destroyed. Not because it had gone badly. It went really well. The students were wonderful. They were really engaged. The lesson plan I had went off without a hitch. But my God, it cost me so much mentally and emotionally and physically to do it, because it's just really intense. The thing that makes me uncomfortable in public, other than there's a baseline level of uncomfortable being out, okay? But I'm really uncomfortable with being observed. One of the things that's been most difficult to come to terms with, and I'm still not fully comfortable with it or used to it in terms of using a wheelchair, is that you're very obvious when you're in a wheelchair and people look at me and stare at me, especially when I get out of the wheelchair, which is a thing that people don't realise that you can do. Not everyone who uses a wheelchair is paralysed, and not all paralysis is complete. Anyway, we're not here for that rant. That rant can come later. So it was being the person teaching a class, even though I had my lecturer that I'd been supervising there with me, and they were super supportive and really helpful through all of this. It was still very intense because I was being observed the whole 3 hours in a way that I wasn't when I was just there shadowing. And it was really, really rough. And I briefly thought I was going to have to say I couldn't do the second session that I was scheduled to teach, and I'm so glad I didn't do that. I ended up teaching that second session, and it was still not what I would call sustainable, but it was much better. I think if I were to get a teaching position that really was just that part, and it was only a limited amount, I could probably do it. What I'm very conscious of is that increasingly a lecturer's job is not just that, and that there's a lot of additional, and we actually talked about this in that session because I was teaching about radical self-care, and so I had a period where we talked about care in the university and where that care comes from and whether that care is remunerated. And we were talking about how a lot of the things that staff do to help is not a part of their job for which they are remunerated. It's something that they do that's additional. So that was really interesting to get to talk to them about as well. I think some of them were surprised. My co-lecturer talked about how they have a second job in addition to being a lecturer. I think that was a thing that surprised a lot of our students. But they were also very, very aware of the problems that are in place in the university at the moment, and I'm thinking a lot about a frankly hilarious email I got today. We're getting all the back to term emails. It's the first day of term. We got the digest from the Central University of everything that's going on. It included a summary of the new names for our schools. I'm now in the School of Humanities. I've been in 4 different schools in the 6 years I've been at this university, and it just changes like every week. It's ridiculous. But this is because they've cut like half of our division, and they also listed all of the parts that they'd cut, which seemed like a slightly telling on yourself thing to do. But the other thing that got to me was, so there is a thing at Kent called Kent 2030. It makes a lot of changes which are all utter ridiculous garbage that will help no one. But they presented it in this newsletter as based on student feedback. Here are the changes coming to Kent this next academic year. Like the fact that there's now teaching basically 12 months of the year. I don't really know where they're going to get the staff for that. Or the money, or, you know, there are so many students that now won't be able to go to this university because they rely on the summer months to work to be able to afford to go to the university. There's so many problems with it. But yeah, I'm thinking about how that's presented as, you know, a positive based on student feedback thing, when in actuality it's real shit. So I don't think that I will be looking for teaching jobs. I don't think it would ultimately be sustainable for me. And again, as I say, a large part of that is due to the non-teaching part of the job, as well as the teaching part. So I'm really glad I did it. I'm very proud of myself for doing it. I utterly wrecked myself in the course of doing it. Basically what would happen is I'd have to be full on for Monday and Tuesday, and then for the next 3 days I was a wreck all of last term, which is understandably why I didn't have the capacity to continue making videos. But yeah, I'm really glad I did it. I'm excited to go back to choir today. The other knock-on thing that happened is that I didn't do any work on my thesis last term, pretty much, like maybe 2 hours over the whole term. That's really hard for me to admit. I feel very ashamed of that. There's a lot of reasons that the world calls me lazy. I have an energy limiting condition. I have experience of madness that has included the sort of depressive kind of low motivation. I'm autistic and have ADHD, so I also struggle with executive dysfunction that way. My life looks different to a lot of people's, and so it's very, very rough whenever I fail to meet a requirement, because all of those brain weasels that are the voices of, you know, society and of people I know, including well-meaning family members who think if I just try hard enough then everything will be fine, and it's really difficult, and that I struggled with a lot. Naturally, my supervisor was incredible, as she always is, and we had a really nice supervision that I submitted nothing for, and I will be submitting very little for my next supervision as well, and those are planned things, because I emailed her partway through the term and said, here's the situation, I don't know what to do, I feel like I'm failing. She reassured me that I'm not. I have been having struggles with the chapter as well, and I'll probably come to that at another time. I think I need to start thinking through things a bit today, to be ready to talk about it more. I've started to process it in my brain, but not in a way that I think I could articulate it yet. Although as I'm saying that, I feel like those words are garbage, and now I'm dissociating because I don't know if I just said the truth or not. One of the lovely things about this holiday is that I had a wonderful time, but existing was still incredibly hard. And I've had a lot of things in the last couple of months that have really reassured me that I can find joy in when I'm struggling, and I can exist and be successful in the sense of what's successful for me, without having to eradicate every bit of madness in my brain. You know, I can still be doing this video successfully because I just like zoned out a bit there and got a bit wibbly, and that's okay. And you know, not that I've magically come to terms with everything about myself, because that's definitely not the case. And in fact, one of the ways I'm thinking about redirecting this chapter is in terms of that, because it is about identity, and I want to think about it in terms of that struggle with identity and especially what we as mad people are told we should be, which a lot of the time is we're told we should be in pursuit of cure, when in fact I think what we should be in pursuit of is contentment and joy, and our version of peace, which isn't going to look like everyone's. You know, I don't think, you know, there will be people who experience voice hearing or visual kinds of hallucinations that do wish that they were completely eradicated, but a lot of people have positive relationships with the voices they hear. You know, a lot of them find a beauty in the kind of visual hallucinations they can see, because visual hallucinations are, you know, depicted in media as like a full-ass person has appeared next to you and you can see it. You see a bird fly past, and absolutely there are people who experience them like that, but there's also a lot of colour distortion, shape distortion, pareidolia, and seeing patterns in things, and that kind of thing that isn't what you'd think of as a vision in that sense. And for those people, those things can be really beautiful, and they don't necessarily want to get rid of them entirely. And I've always had this thing of not wanting to change and being afraid of changing. I think actually what it was is that I was afraid of being forced to be something that wasn't myself, especially as someone who was only, realised to be autistic very, very recently relative to the length of my life. I had a student, by the way, who came to me and said, do you have any resources for late diagnosed autistics? Because I didn't get diagnosed until I was 19. And I was like, that's, sweetheart, here are some resources, but that's not late diagnosis. Me getting diagnosed in my mid-30s. So yeah, it's that kind of thing of not, I have these differences, and that's okay, and that's gonna make it hard, and that also makes me me. And I want to try and get that energy into this chapter. I've been thinking about how I want to write the creative kind of intro. I also pulled back and looked at, the very basics of what I want my thesis to be and to argue, and that helped a lot. I think I'd like to do another couple of runs of Slay the Princess especially, and to really dig down into what it means to me as a mad person playing it, and why it reflects my struggle to find my own identity and to work that out. I've got a book that I got for Christmas on mad studies methodology that I'd like to look at a bit as well. I don't have a really set, determined, this is how I'm gonna fix this chapter yet, but I think I have a way forward to finding it. And I also, importantly, don't have to go in 2 days in a row this term. I fixed that. I'm going in on Monday and Thursday, and that's much more doable and livable. And I just have to go through it slowly. It is less intense. This is a shorter term. Which, again, I think I've mentioned this before, but that impacts me not because I follow terms. I happen to have taken the Christmas holidays off in their entirety, just because that's what I took off. But more happens during term time. So, I've got events and things to go to, and more deadlines, and I need to look at funding stuff again, because we're putting this in a box and placing it to the side, but let's say that the Department of Work and Pensions are being dicks again. We'll just put that over there. We've had some very interesting arguments as to why my benefits need to be reduced, and we will be fighting those. But sorry, that box apparently didn't get put away very well. I'm very angry, and I'm not very good at being angry. But yeah, so that's the plan. And I'm just gonna do my best. So the plan for today is I'm gonna head in a minute. Thankfully it warmed up enough that I can still take Mythal. It was -3 yesterday, and it's not safe to charge her. in that temperature, and it's been that cold for several days, so there was ice everywhere, and I was really worried about getting there. I'm still worried about getting there, but not as much as I would, because it's like 6 degrees and it has been, you know, above freezing for a while. There's no frost left outside that I can see. The absolute worst case is I get part way up the hill and I'm skidding too much and I turn around and I come home. Because as much as I want to go to the first choir rehearsal of the term, the world does not end if I do not go to choir today. So yeah, that's my plan. I've got some reading to do when I get there. I'm going to start planning things out and thinking about what I want to do, maybe do that run through of the game again, and just show up those 2 days a week and see what happens. And that's my plan. And hopefully this will manage to happen more this term, because I will not be a ball of goo for half of the week. I genuinely believe now that some of the most important work we do as academics is when we're not working, because the breakthroughs I've had this week since that first bit of film are entirely based on the time that I took off. You know, I got some little bits done last term, which did help. I did some mind mapping of the different properties of visual novels and how they related to ideas of identity. I talked to my friends over the holidays about how I was stuck and where and why it just felt like it wasn't coming together, and I had some disparate comments about visual novels that didn't really have that grounding driving force of what is the aspect of madness that I'm looking at and why is it important and why do I care about it. And then on Monday I read an entire book, which is a fantastic book called A Mad Turn, and it's a book about mad studies methodologies, and that really cemented some things in my mind. The next couple of days I was really unwell, and I was actually in a very mad state, and in that state I wrote the opening to the chapter, and all of those things brought together meant that when I sat down on Thursday, I knew what the answer was. And I knew that the answer is everyone has to work out who they are, right? Everyone has to work out who they want to be. But the way that we in our Western Euro-American society do that is by saying, oh, what do you do? Or what do you want to be when you grow up? It's all based in a neoliberal capitalist ideology. And as mad people, that is often the very fucking antithesis of what we are, want to be, or can be. On top of that, and this is really the core of what I want to argue now in the chapter, mad identity is fundamentally mutable. And I worked out a load of sub-properties, all sort of offshoots of that, but the fundamental part is that to be mad is to be changeable, and that's the only way that I can make sense of my identity, and the only way that I think as mad people we can make sense of identity in a world that thinks identity is based around something very different. And there's a lot more to that, and I'm probably not explaining it terribly well, but it's given me this whole sense of meaning behind this chapter, and getting to explore these visual novels in not a new light, but a better understanding of the light I was already looking at them in. And I'm actually really excited to do more work. I'm also, to be clear, exhausted and in tons of pain right now as I'm recording this, but it's happening, and it's happening because I had the help and privilege to be able to radically care about myself in the ways that I have done. And not everyone gets that, and I'm very conscious of that, but I am very grateful for it. I'm very relieved that it's that did it, not just trying harder, as if I wasn't already trying enough.